Dear lecturers, participants and guests of the 4th Spring Nobel Festival, a world of exponential innovation, Sakensi Folin Kazakh Agritechnical University, the general partner of this event, is hosting this year's festival. For 65 years of its activity, KATU has trained more than 70,000 specialists, successfully working in all major sectors of the agrotechnical sphere. Among the ranks of our graduates are deputies of the Parliament of the Republic of Kazakhstan, heads of leading enterprises, nationally known public figures, and athletes. Today, our university is one of the leaders of the national higher education on the national rating of the demand for higher education institutions of Kazakhstan, from the IAAR on the quality of educational programs. And also, KATU is the base university for digitalization of agricultural production in Kazakhstan. Our partners include more than 160 world-renowned leading research universities and research centers. Among them are the University of California at Davis, which is the second highest institution in the world of the agricultural industry, Agro-Polytech University in Europe, and many others. Today, KATU has started a dual diploma education in 3 specialties jointly with the University of Milan in Italy, which gives our graduates the opportunity to receive diplomas from 2 countries. Our university offers the opportunity to study at bachelor's, master's, and doctorates. Currently, the number of students exceeds 12,000, of whom 70% are studying under the state grants. There is a full opportunity to study in the military department. All necessary conditions are created for them to be qualified specialists. The university aims for a seamless experience in any format of education. For students, there is a printing office and a library equipped with an electronic system that has more than 1.5 million book collections. As Kazakhstan's leading university in the agricultural sector, we are speakers at a session of the Spring Festival represented by the chairman of the board of KATU, PhD in economics, Kairat Kaparovich Aytuganov.
About 10 seconds.
Нурбек, нельзя Zoom, Bridge, Zoom 3, Bridge 1 все выключить звуки? Шум ужасный.
Can I start now?
Sure, I think you can, yeah.
Мерген, представьте его.
Okay, let me briefly introduce. So, dear conference participants, I am glad to welcome you all. So, my name is Dr. Mergen ДЮСЕНОВ. I have recently joined the Kazakh Agritechnical University as the chair of Marketing and Management Department, a part of the Faculty of Economics. So, I hold a PhD degree from the Rae Kwon Chung School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore. The topic of today's presentation session is the new climate economy. So let me also introduce our distinguished speaker, Professor Rae Kwon Chung, who is the Professor Emeritus of the School of Convergence Science and Technology at Incheon National University in the Republic of Korea. So Professor Chung is a global expert and a prominent advocate of green growth. His contribution to the work of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was appreciated with the Nobel Prize awarded in 2007. For a long time, Professor Chung was the chief advisor to the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, on climate change. Now, Professor Chung acts as a member of the International Committee for the Global Energy Prize and serves as an advisor on water and natural disasters under the UN Secretary General. So the proposed format is as follows. The speaker shall be given up to 30 minutes to present and that would be followed by the moderators' comments and the Q&A discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And it is my pleasure to meet you, even though through by the Zoom. And today I'd like to introduce you some of the new thinking that in order to meet the challenge we are facing now, because many people are now saying that we are experiencing the perfect storm of crisis, which means we have an ecological crisis, social crisis, public health crisis, and the economic crisis as well. So the crisis is not just an environmental crisis, but social, public health, and even economic. I don't want to even mention about politics. So we are experiencing crisis on every level of our sustainable development challenge. Sustainable development is usually, there are three pillars. Number one is economy. Number two is environment. Number three is society. In other words, like market, nature, and the people. These are the three basic pillar axis of sustainable development. But now what we are experiencing these days is the ecological crisis, like a climate crisis. And then now we are also experiencing pandemic. Pandemic can be also categorized as one of the ecological crisis because it came from animal. The virus came from the bat and animal because we destroyed animal habitat. And now the virus now attacking the human society. So this is another phase of ecological crisis. But the social crisis, the income disparity, inequality, unemployment, lack of social protection is making the quality of life going down. And then economic crisis, because of these days the politics and all this, I don't want to mention what's going on now, you know better than me. So the politics are even risking economic prosperity. So we are facing crisis on all fronts of our life. This is really very daunting and challenging and very threatening. And we are very frightened. How can we address these multiple, somebody say perfect storm, which means this is really the combination of crisis, which will be very difficult to meet the challenge. So what I want to emphasize at the beginning is that why this crisis has happened. We have to understand it clearly and very correctly. Otherwise, we cannot come up with a solution for it, because our solution will depend on how we are going to analyze the reason why we are experiencing these crises. My analysis, why we are facing these kind of multiple crises on all the phases of our life, is, from my point of view, is because we are too much obsessed about economic profit, especially short-term economic return, in other words, economic profit, and or in other words, GDP, economic growth. We are only focusing on mass production and mass consumption and making more money in the short run. That is, we are all obsessed about. This kind of a paradigm, so-called free market paradigm, has been working fine until almost like 1990 or 1980. This paradigm, the free market paradigm and globalization, the so-called globalization, worked quite well, and it has spread out the economic growth and prosperity starting from developed country, spreading to developing country as well. So even in Central Asia, Southeast Asia, many of the developing countries has joined this free market, globalization, the prosperity to a certain degree. Many countries were experiencing certain level of economic growth. So the poverty has been very much reduced. So we came to believe if we pursue free market, economic growth, short-term GDP production maximization, then the rest of the problem like quality of life, environmental crisis, all these environmental issue or social issue will be resolved if we focus on economic growth and GDP growth. Then these kind of things will be resolved and our quality of life will go up and even the environmental problems can be addressed. This was the kind of assumption we have been believing in. This kind of assumption that economic growth will improve quality of life and at the same time quality of environment. So this is kind of a very good cycle, very I call it virtuous cycle, which is a good cycle. So economy, environment and society has been working very well, and there's a win-win synergy between those three pillars. That has been the experience we have been seeing until almost up to year 2000. Then we experienced at the end of 2008 global financial crisis, and then after that the global economic growth has been abruptly interrupted and it stopped, and the economic situation around the world has been very much negatively impacted by the global financial crisis. Since then, the situation has been completely changed, which means economic growth will not improve quality of life or ecological sustainability. So the more we push for economic growth, then the quality of life will go down, and also the sustainability of environment also goes down. In other words, between the market, people, and nature, the three pillars, the relationship, the dynamics between these three pillars has become all of a sudden vicious cycle. In other words, bad cycle. The more we push for market, then the nature will be more destroyed, and the quality of life will be more destroyed as well. So this market, in other words, short-term economic growth is going to negatively impact on nature and the people. So the current situation is that economic growth is only possible by exploiting or sacrificing nature and the people, because in order to minimize the cost of wage, because the net human resource, which is workers, labor is become a kind of cost. So in order to minimize the cost, you have to reduce the wage. So the income, labor income has to be reduced. And you don't get a lifetime guarantee for the employment. You can be fired anytime. So the job security will be going down. And at the same time, you are forced to use cheap fossil fuel like a coal in order to minimize the cost. So the current free market paradigm is enforcing us to pay less and less money for wage, the labor, and also for the natural resource. So human resource, natural resource has been regarded as a kind of cost. So this is the situation we are stuck in now. This is why the more we push for economic growth, then our environment will be more destroyed. And the quality of life will be destroyed as well. So this is the kind of bad cycle we are stuck in. So my analysis, how we should get out of this bad cycle, in other words, vicious cycle, is we have to change the paradigm of our development. Our current development paradigm is too much focusing on short-term production and the short-term GDP, short-term profit. But we have to look at long-term prosperity or quality of life and the ecological sustainability. If we don't take care of quality of life issue, which is a social safety net, welfare, job security, if we don't take care of those issues, then the quality of life will go down. And so we also have to take care of our nature, natural resource. Otherwise, we will suffer from pollution, fine dust, and climate crisis. So our survival is at stake. So we have to shift our development planning focus from short-term production or profit maximization towards long-term social and ecological sustainability. This is not easy. So who should do this? Whose job is it? Before, our thinking was we just leave it to the market. Leave it to the market. And business, economic growth will take care of it. So government should not interfere. The government's role should be minimized, and the market role has to be maximized. So wherever we go, we heard privatization. All these kind of things will be much better. This has been the message we heard. Everybody was focusing on privatization because we believed privatization will solve all the problems. You know, privatization means if we leave it to the market, the market will take care of social problem and ecological problem. But unfortunately, that is not the role of market. Market role is not improving quality of life and improving ecological sustainability. It is not the job of the market. It is the job of government. It is the job of the government. So before, during the globalization process, free market, neoclassical theory, depending on the theory of neoclassical theory, we have been emphasizing we should leave everything to the market. But in fact, that paradigm, the free market paradigm, cannot deliver long-term sustainability. Free market paradigm will destroy ecological and social sustainability. So we have to change the paradigm from just free market to sustainability market or sustainable market. In other words, the government has to intervene and the government has to play a very important role in allocating resources, investment for environment and for the people and nature. This is a very important role of the government to play in the future. So this is actually very much contrary to, against the textbook information, knowledge of the economics currently the students in the university, they are learning economics textbook. These textbooks are saying that we should leave it to the market and the government should be minimized. This is what the textbook is teaching to the student. But unfortunately, the knowledge contained in the current economics textbook is very much outdated, and we cannot solve our current and the future problem with the knowledge in our economics textbook. This is why I emphasize that we have to invent, create new climate economy. What I mean by new climate economy means that investing in climate, investing in other words, or as well also for society, investing in social safety net and the people, like education, health, this kind of investment for people and the investment for climate crisis should be a driver of economic growth. So this kind of investment from public sector and government for our long-term goal, for environment and for society should be the driver of economic growth. Then we can restore the negative, the bad cycle between economy, environment, and society. So we have to make the dynamics between these three pillars of sustainable development should be in the virtuous cycle, the good cycle, win-win cycle, rather than these three pillars are undermining each other. So we have to completely shift from the conventional old paradigm of free market and globalization. I don't think globalization will no longer deliver prosperity to many developing countries or free market doctrine. So we have to, country like Kazakhstan, in the middle of a development process, has to have a very clear vision. What is the role of the government? You cannot just leave it to the market. Government has to play a very important role. And I'm very glad that actually Kazakhstan, background, historical background, is a socialist country. That has been, normally, people were thinking that socialist regime is bad. Of course, there was a problem, I know. But what I'm saying is that I'm not saying that we should go back to socialism. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is government has to play a very proactive role in making the market work better, because the current free market is creating a lot of problems, like destroying environment and also destroying the quality of life. Then government has to intervene so that this market can contribute to improving quality of life as well as addressing climate crisis. So this is the role of the government. But in the case of Kazakhstan, the government traditionally has been playing a very strong and a very important role in running development planning. So if the Kazakhstan government is wise and very smart, then they can exercise the strong government role to improve and making the market work more effectively, not only for just production and profit, but at the same time for social quality of life, and also at the same time climate crisis issue. So this is what I'm saying, that now the days that we are only thinking about just leave it to the market is gone. So this is what I call new climate economy, where the government has to intervene so that investing in climate action can be a driver of economic growth in the long run. So this is what I mean by new climate economy. So I will stop here, and if there's any questions, maybe I can pick up, and then maybe I can elaborate further.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Chung, for very interesting and insightful presentation. Actually, the term of the new climate economy is so fascinating. It's very short, and yet it really entails a lot of further thinking. So, with regards to this topic, recent research suggests that especially wind and solar power have become actually quite competitive to the degree that it can compete with traditional fossil fuels, such as coal, for example, even without subsidies. Particularly, like in several markets such as the US, Mexico, Chile, Brazil, South Africa, etc. However, some countries still depend on extracting the fossil fuels, such as coal and oil and gas. Countries such as Kazakhstan, Russia, China, etc. And therefore, they might not be ready to switch to renewable energy completely, in the near term. However, there are other countries, such as the European Union states and Southeast Asian countries, which should be more ready to switch to renewable energy. However, they don't seem to be doing that completely yet. So the question is, why do you believe these other markets have not caught up with the champion countries?
Yeah. That's a very very good question and issue, and that shows even though some European country is showing some leadership, but unfortunately it is very limited. And as you say, in Southeast Asia, where the solar power is so strong, still solar power, you cannot find much solar power there. So still the paradigm of the current global economy is a short-term profit, and the governments in Southeast Asia still not yet capable of playing a proper role to encourage or to facilitate catalytic role to make solar power. I believe if the government there, if they can play a little bit of a catalytic role, then I think they can spread out a lot more solar power in those Southeast Asian countries. Because you see, if you go Singapore, wherever you go, huge, you lived in Singapore. So the sunshine is so strong and you're suffering from the hot sun, right? Still, you don't use the energy from the sun. So this is what I'm saying. This is showing that new climate economy is not yet starting. But since now the governments, especially by the U.S. Biden administration, they are pushing for net zero pledges. So the governments are now coming up with some pledges for 2030 and 2050. So this kind of a political decision might put more momentum for these governments to take some actions. This is why I'm saying that the role of government is very critical. If you leave it to the market, it will never happen. It will never happen because it's not market choice. Market will only choose the cheapest and the dirtiest choice. This is what I'm saying, that we need, so government leaders has to understand it. But secondly, not only just government, but also at the same time, people have to understand it. Unfortunately, in many countries, people do not have that kind of understanding. They do not support it. In some countries, if you raise electricity price, they will be protesting, right? And so the government has to try to make the people to understand it, so that people understand it. And in order to protect our climate crisis, And for our survival, we have to be ready to pay a little bit higher price for our energy consumption. So here, I have these days I'm pushing for a very interesting idea from myself. What I'm saying is that if you ask all the people to pay a higher price for like solar panel for all the people in the country, it will be very difficult. The political consensus will be very difficult. So what I'm proposing is that we can have a voluntary scheme. Voluntary scheme means that there are some people, maybe not too many in Kazakhstan, maybe, because your level of income is quite low. But country like in Singapore, for example, or country like Malaysia and Thailand, there are so many rich people, and in Korea too. Then we introduce a optional system where people who are concerned about climate crisis, we can give them an option. You can pay maybe $20 rather than $10. So those people who are willing to pay more price for the same energy because I want to use more clean electricity and I'm ready to pay $10 more for clean energy. Then we can make those money to be invested for clean energy. So this is something we can start to take action. Especially, you may know that there are many environmental organizations in Kazakhstan as well. I know the AEOK, Association of Environmental Organizations in Kazakhstan, AEOK. I was the advisor there. This kind of organizations can start a campaign. The campaign for what? Let's pay for extra money for the solar energy. So if your electric bill is like, for example, is $20, then you say that, okay, I will pay $22. I will pay $2 more for renewable energy. So those people concerned about climate crisis, some rich people, even in Kazakhstan, there are many rich people. So those rich people should start. Some people say, I will pay $2 more, but some people can say, I can pay $20 more. Some people can say, I can pay $50 more. We just leave it to them, their choice. And this kind of option should be a kind of a social movement from the people who are concerned about climate change. So they start first, and then it can become a kind of social movement. And more people joining this kind of campaign, then we can change the world.
Interesting. So basically what you mentioned is, the elements of so-called crowdfunding, right? When you actually approach, people in general for their voluntary contribution.
It's a little different from funding. What I'm saying is, if you receive a monthly, every month, you receive an electricity bill, but you give some kind of option, you can choose to pay whatever you, is $10. This kind. So this money will be earmarked to go for buying solar power from the solar power, the producers. So this is a kind of scheme that we have to think about, because we cannot wait until everybody agrees to raising the price of electricity. So some people should start this kind of campaign.
Okay, Professor Chung, thank you very much for your interesting, insightful responses. So let's give the audience an opportunity to ask questions. So we are now entering the Q&A session. So dear conference participants, if you have any questions, feel free to ask Professor Chung. You should switch the sound. Someone is talking, I think.
I'm so sorry. Good day, Professor Chung. First of all, I would like to say thank you for good information. This information was so important and informative for us, especially for me. I am familiar that the green economy. You know that science is developing very fast now. As a researcher from outside economics. I wonder if you could explain what term new climate economy means in practice. And second, my question, how it lead to more jobs given the slowdown of traditional fuel extraction? Thank you.
Yeah. Of course, it is a kind of transit or transformation from old energy industry to new energy industry. And there has been many studies from IRENA. IRENA is an Institute for Renewable Energy Association, something like that. IRENA has been publishing a report saying that if we invest in solar and wind power, it will create more jobs than coal mining industry or coal power plant. Coal power plant, coal mining, no longer creating any more jobs. They are employing very few people. But solar panel, wind turbine, they employ a lot more people. So it will create more job opportunity and even cleaner. As you know that coal mining, nobody wants to do coal mining these days. It's a very dirty job. But solar panel, wind power is not that dirty job. It's a very decent job. So the quality of job as well as the number of jobs can be increased. So this is just one example, but there will be many other areas we can improve energy efficiency. So building insulation. So we have to improve the way we use our energy in our buildings, so more efficiently. So we have to improve our buildings and building design. These kind of things will require a lot more employment and workers, and it will create more job opportunity. So, but it will never happen until government imposes stronger standard and criteria for the building construction companies. Then they will create more jobs. So unless you don't impose higher standard and regulations, these things will not happen. But in many countries, governments are afraid, and they don't want to impose any kind of regulation on the business, because business don't like regulations. But if you don't do any kind of those higher standard and regulations, then you will not create more jobs, and you will suffer from low energy efficiency and the waste of energy, and you are suffering from unsustainability. So this kind of role the government has to play, and also as a tool, policy tool for new climate economy, I have been always promoting the idea of a tax reform. We have to change our tax system from now we are paying tax by the income, but we have to change paying tax by CO2. So if you produce more CO2, then you pay more tax. But you reduce tax on income. So you pay less tax on your income, but you pay more tax on your CO2. This is a tax reform, ecological tax reform, the ETR. This idea has been very much discussed in Europe and many countries already. In fact, Europe has a very high tax on CO2. And they are using this tax money to improve energy efficiency and for climate action. So a country like Kazakhstan, you cannot increase carbon tax because big burden, but you can reduce income tax. So government does not increase too much tax because you are reducing income tax. So you pay less tax from your salary. But if you use energy, if you are driving a car, if you are using a lot of energy, wasting energy, then you pay more tax because energy price goes up. Then you have an incentive to improve energy efficiency in your apartment. So you will take insulation in your apartment. And you will not drive too much private car. You will use public transportation. So this kind, and also public transportation is one of the very important job creation opportunity. In order to reduce private car driving, government has to invest to improve public transportation. So public transportation has to be very convenient, clean, and very efficient. Then people will not drive a private car, and you don't have to suffer from traffic congestion. But already in Almaty and Astana, there are a lot of traffic congestion. But if you improve public transportation, so if you improve public transportation, you create a lot of jobs, and you reduce private car driving. So less pollution and less energy consumption. And so this is what I'm saying, new climate economy. And so ecological tax reform is a very important tool for new climate economy.
Excellent.
For the complete answer for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent, Prof. Chung. It's a very, very insightful response. I would just, add just a few comments. Where you said that you emphasized the role of government in actually pushing this agenda. However, many scholars are referring to what is termed as the evidence-based policy or evidence-informed policy. So informed by whom? It actually informed by academia and researchers. So I should just add, this comment that when we talk about the role of government, it should definitely be informed or even shaped by the researchers primarily. So this is where these research centers come in. Think tanks, all these people from academia. They should be actually driving this agenda. And they should build the dialogue with the government and with the society at large. We have
I can give you one example of what your center can do. For example, as we are only emphasizing economic cost and economic data, in many cases we don't see another hidden, invisible cost. I will tell you just one example. In Korea, we have a huge traffic congestion. Everybody driving private car. In Almaty, Astana too, there's a traffic congestion. In Korea, we have an institution calculating the cost of traffic congestion. The number is amazing. Because of traffic congestion, the cost of traffic congestion means you are stuck in the traffic, so you are losing your working hour, right? So if you are stuck in the traffic for 2 hours, then you lost 2 hours of working hour, right? So you calculate per hour average in wage. Then you calculate the 2 hours. Then you calculate how many people are stuck. So you can calculate the lost opportunity cost. Then also we are wasting gasoline because you don't go and you are stuck there and the engine is running, right? So you are wasting energy, right? You can calculate how much energy is wasted. So if you add lost working hour, lost gasoline, these two came out. Can you imagine in Korea, we are losing 3.6% of GDP. 3.6% of GDP is lost by traffic congestion. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, it is absolutely. Yeah, and on top of that, you should also calculate the mental health issues, right? Because when people are impatient, to get
quality
to work,
of life, stress,
exactly.
Not to mention that, but only this physical cost, which is gasoline and working hour, is about 3.6% of our GDP. Absolutely. Korean economy grew maybe 2% a year, or sometimes 1%, sometimes minus, but 3.6% we are losing every year only from traffic congestion. if we calculate this kind of number, then you see how much we are not really looking at the hidden cost. So we have to come up calculating this kind of hidden cost so that the policymakers will realize that we can improve a lot.
All right. So Professor Chung, it's been an extremely amazing session today. And your presentation is indeed, has inspired, further thinking about this intriguing topic. So by all means, we shall be in touch with you, I believe. Let me, come back to you a little bit later. We will discuss with our management, the topic that we have discussed today, and then we shall definitely be back to you. So thank you very much, Professor Chung, for your wonderful presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So, dear conference participants, I hope you have all enjoyed the presentation today. Thank you and goodbye.